Welcome to the EGC Marketing Podcast. We provide you with the latest digital marketing news, performance marketing tips, and creative problem-solving skills you need to stay resilient in our fast-changing world of marketing. Listen and learn how to get the edge over your competition and grow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EGC Marketing Edge Podcast. I am your host, Max Ross, and today I am joined by Rich DeSimone, who is the Creative Director and Vice President at EGC. One of our goals with these podcasts is to give you actionable and relevant advice to develop winning marketing strategy. In this episode, Rich and I will take you through some of the emerging creative trends and strategies which are both gaining popularity and driving real growth for clients. Rich, it's great to have you with us.
What's up, Max? Good to be here, buddy.
Awesome. So we'll jump straight right into it. So the media landscape is always changing. But it seems more active than ever with all of these new advancements. Think of the Las Vegas sphere and other forms of non-traditional media. What recent projects have jumped out to you? And why do you think they're basically generating this curiosity, and how can they add value for clients?
Sure, yeah. The one piece that I see that keeps popping out to me that I've seen for a couple of clients now, I think I saw it with Maybelline, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the sort of CG stuff people are doing in the social space where the front of a subway is outfitted with a big set of eyelashes, and as the train pulls into the station in the UK, it goes under a mascara brush, and it sort of looks like it's getting lashes put on, and those things are gaining incredible traction. People are questioning. It actually looks like a piece of out of home. So people are questioning whether that's actually been installed or is it CG. We actually even debated it here. There was some people who thought it was real. And that's the stuff that I think is really getting a lot of traction when it's done right. And that one was done really well. They did it in London. They did it in the subway. They did it with a bus, which was really cool. I don't know why London seems to be the hotspot for it, but I also saw it for North Face there. They actually put the super trendy North Face puffer jacket on Big Ben, which was very popular and looked real. And there's been a few others. We've been looking at that stuff a lot. We've been talking to a lot of clients about it. The thing that's great about that is it looks like a piece of out of home. It gets a lot of traction, and then it gets picked up in the secondary trades as well. So it gets a lot of buzz outside of just your core audience or on social. So we're loving that stuff. And like I said, we're actively talking to a lot of our clients about making some of that kind of content. The cool thing about it too is while it might look expensive, it's not as expensive as you'd think. From a production standpoint, a lot of that stuff is shot with phones. You go to the spot where you want to recreate something like that, like Big Ben. You set up a couple of people in the shot. They're shooting it actually with their phones. It's being brought back to some animators who are then putting the jacket on Big Ben. But it's not as expensive as you'd think. And the sort of after effects of the amount of coverage you get from it is great. So, that's what I'm really excited about.
Definitely with, I guess, the case of the puffer jacket on Big Ben in particular, a lot of these, ads, if you want to call them, they look like they were amateur, in a sense that they were shot by a normal person capturing that moment. And, we do see, the rise of obviously, TikTok and social media. Do you think, these very polarizing images, like they are authentic in a sense? And do you think that may contribute to a higher chance of virality? How important is it, to still remain authentic and have that ability to not make these CGI images seem CGI?
Yeah, that's a great point, because they do seem like just your average person sort of picking it up and shooting it. And I think that's honestly what separates the good ones from the great ones, or the good ones from the crappy ones, because I've seen a lot of bad ones where it's obvious it's CG, it looks overproduced. They've done everything that you probably shouldn't do, and it's probably not performing like it should. To your point, these examples we shared look so organic. I think that's part of, to what you're saying, the virility of it. I think that's what helps it catch fire quickly. Is people are sort of, I feel like they want to believe it's real. They're not sure. So I think that uncertainty is what helps make it so shareable.
And I guess, transitioning from the actual content itself to the vessels in which content is delivered, we're seeing that shift as well. Like mainly
Mm-hmm.
with two examples I could think off the top of the bat is obviously the Sphere in Las Vegas. It was especially popular during, F1, and even these, billboards that are, three-dimensional. You see like shoes coming out of boxes or oceans pouring water onto a street. I'm just curious, again, what has been your thought on these new vessels, if you want to call it, and if you have any examples of maybe memorable campaigns that you've seen on these things.
Vessel is a great term for it, because that's truly what it is. And being based here in New York, there's a bunch of them in the city that I've seen already, and they're equally awesome. A bit different than the previous example we were talking about, but just as great. And I think one of the ones I saw that really stood out was one for Louis Vuitton that they did, where there was a giant person there sort of reaching down and grabbing stuff. We've been also looking at that for some clients. The tricky part with those is you truly do need to shoot for that. Like there's a lot of back end tech that goes into those that make them a little more complex to bring to life, but there's a whole gamut of ways to make it real. You mentioned the shoes sort of popping out, and a lot of times what people are doing with those is they're shrinking what you think is the frame of the billboard so that they could break that frame and make it seem like it's 3D. It really is beautiful, and a bunch of others are done on a corner piece, so that there's sort of two parts to it, which help with the three-dimensional aspect of it. I love them. I think they're great. I think as you see more and more billboards in other cities sort of transition from either traditional or just a flat screen, I think you're going to see a lot more of that. The Sphere, I think, I love the Sphere in its concept, but that one's a little bit of an outlier for me. I think that just gets all the eyeballs because, listen, it's in Vegas. You're flying in. It's there. It's like staring at the sun almost. I have yet to see it live. But it is a little bit more like you don't see a ton of advertising on it yet. I feel like they just transitioned away from U2. Now they're doing a ton of residencies there. I think as we're speaking now, Fish is doing like a 4-day residency there. And you see a lot of the exterior sort of start to take on whatever show or act is happening there. But I love that thing. And we've been big advocates of it as well here. And we've been trying to sort of find the right, the key is, and I know you know this, is finding the right partner for that. Like the shape of that plays has a play in on it, right? And like there's a bunch of factors to it. Like we try to make sure it's the right fit, no matter what the case is. Like making sure the media works for the client is important, and make sure we're not just sort of trying to jump into something because it looks cool but doesn't make the most sense. Isn't the best use of dollars, obviously, but yeah, we're always looking for these kind of solutions for our clients.
Yeah, most definitely. Do you see marketing, or rather these campaigns, start to become like more experiential, especially like with the case of the Sphere? Like when you're inside it, you're fully immersed. If someone is running some type of campaign and all of your senses are stimulated, is that where the future may be heading? I'm thinking about it particularly in the augmented reality spaces with these headsets. How that's affecting some of the campaigns. I know that there was recently a partnership between Apple Vision Pro and the PGA Tour, to where you're basically going to be able to immerse yourself in a golf tournament, track the holes, whatever. I'm wondering just how AR, obviously we could have our own episode on this and go on and on, but just how that's impacting the decision making and strategic choices of some of the clients.
Yeah, I think we all know Apple sort of always sets the stage for what's to come. So I think now that those have sort of officially gotten into the hands of a lot of people, I think right now they're not totally mainstream, right? Like we see a lot of guys walking around in LA with them on, getting out of their, Tesla Cybertrucks, right? It's like, it's not with the masses yet, but I think as it becomes more attainable, it's going to be much more popular. But to the first part of your point about the immersive experiences, I think those have always been part of the sort of advertising landscape. I think they started out to be more sort of analog, if you will, those experiences, right? Like they were like showing up at a place and like it's tricked out in whatever the sort of brand campaign is. And I think now with the sort of adaptation of all these different types of screens and ways that you could further immerse yourself into the brand, I think you'll see that more and more as time goes on.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap, just in terms of new and emerging trends, is this whole aspect of the creator economy, where you have particular these thought leaders on platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, et cetera, usually YouTube because that's where the long form content is, really start to create brand partnerships that are significantly valuable. Like specifically, I know Mr. Beast is kind of the guy when it comes to that sort of thing, commanding hundreds of millions of views per video. I'm wondering, is there thought going into partnering with these new creators and developing campaigns specifically around them, obviously while keeping the brand voice consistent, and just any thoughts you might have on that?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously with our social team here, we're constantly looking at those kind of opportunities. We're starting here basically like a creator network. So we're trying to sort of aggregate all the people we know into a place because the consumer wants authenticity, and I think that's why it resonates so strongly with people, and I think that's why it performs so well, and I think that's why brands like to align to it. It's like the perfect storm because brands could talk to people, but at the end of the day, people want to relate to something, right? And they can relate to brands if the brand tells a good story and has a great narrative, and that's what we love to do, and that's what we love to make here is creating great brand narratives. But a lot of times, like an extra layer of that really does come from these creators you're talking about, so that there's sort of boots on the ground, people you trust, and people, more importantly, that your customers trust. That's just irreplaceable. Like you can't replicate that. It's kind of like lightning in a bottle. Like once your audience sort of connects with people like that, it's like we could spend countless amounts of dollars creating great commercials or visually stunning things, but sometimes the investment makes sense on the other side, where we partner with somebody, to your point, and let them do some of that heavy lifting. I don't think anything's ever an either or. I think it's always going to be a together combination thing. Extensions of campaigns or integrations of campaigns with people like that always make it much more powerful than being singular, right? Like singular content creators or a singular big splashy campaign, like those things working in their own world, siloed is one thing. But when we sort of start to shuffle the deck and it becomes the cool piece of CG stunt that we just talked about, and the content guy who's talking about the puffer jacket, and the kind of cool brand campaign we've created for it, all working together, it becomes greatness.
And with that, we'll get into the final wrapping question. What most excites you about everything that we've just spoken today, and is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners just about future trends or anything that's interesting you currently?
Yeah, well, I think what excites me most is like when you don't see this stuff coming, and then it comes in like waves, right? Like no one saw like sort of that sort of fake, out of home stuff coming, and then it came in a wave, and it was like, oh man, that's really cool. And now it's like around, and it becomes like another piece in the toolkit to sort when we start developing campaigns. It's like, oh well, what about that really cool stuff we saw from whomever? Like how can we make our version of that? How can we evolve it, or because after a while that also gets a little bit of fatigue. So it's like, how do you take what was done there and amplify it a little bit or do it a little differently? So I love that. And then obviously this is a whole nother podcast too for another day, but just what's happening in AI has been amazing. In the creative sense, a lot of people talk about ChatGPT and some of the other stuff, but even from a visual standpoint, the stuff that I'm seeing being done, I was just at AI conference, and I was chatting with one guy, and he was showing me some stuff he was doing in video videos, and the stuff he made was just unbelievable. And from the imagery that he created to then bringing it into sort of animating software in AI, and then bringing it out to the platforms, it was truly amazing. And the more we embrace that kind of stuff, the better everything becomes, and the better everyone else can do their job. So I get excited about all that stuff.
Same here. And with that, we're
Cool.
just about ready to end. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you found this podcast to be useful, please like, share, subscribe. We have a great series of additional speakers in the pipeline, so do feel free to stay posted, and we will see you all later. Rich, thanks again.
Thanks, Max.